Stop acting like a coward, Maria. We are 3 loads behind, and your caution is killing this schedule. Brent Halverson said it loud enough for the whole morning crew to hear, his voice cutting across Pier 14 at 5:40 a.m. like a horn blast. Forklifts idled in low gear, taglines slapped against steel. 2 riggers on the staging lane stopped mid-knot and looked up. The coffee truck vendor, parked just inside the gate, froze with a cardboard tray in his hand. Brent stood with one polished boot on the painted curb, hard hat clean, vest still folded crisp from the office locker, index finger leveled at Maria Sullivan as if pointing could rewrite a load chart. The words stayed in the lane like diesel smoke, and Maria had the grim sense they were the kind people repeated after something went wrong. Maria did not answer him right away. She stood beside the left crawler track of Crane 6, gloves tucked under her arm, inspection tablet open, morning mist beating on the screen. She had learned years ago that the first response in a public dressing down was rarely for the person doing the yelling. It was for the 30 people listening, trying to decide whether procedure still meant anything on this site. Her jaw tightened once, then settled. Brent seemed to read her silence as retreat and stepped closer. You heard me. We have export windows stacked by the half hour. You don't get to hold the whole yard hostage because you woke up nervous. The wind coming off the water pushed diesel exhaust through the lane and carried the smell of wet concrete. Maria kept her eyes on him, not defensive, not meek, just level. She had seen that look irritate supervisors before. To them it could read like a refusal to concede authority. My name is Maria Sullivan, she said, voice even the way she said it when she testified in internal reviews. I am the senior crane operator on this pier, NCCCO certified, 14 years, heavy lift, lattice and hydraulic. I clear $186,000 a year because this site pays for refusal when refusal keeps people alive. A few crew members looked away to hide their reaction. Credentials spoken out loud in front of management always created friction. It sounded like a challenge, even when it was only fact. Brent gave a short laugh with no humor in it. You want applause? Nobody here is paying you to recite your resume. They are paying me to make the call when the machine goes unsafe. What they're paying you for, Brent snapped, is to move steel from point A to point B. Today you've been slow on both. He pivoted to the crew as if holding a press conference. This is what obsolete looks like. Plenty of certificates, no urgency. The word landed harder than the others. Coward was a common insult on docks, where fear got confused with discipline. Lazy was standard management pressure language whenever a clock slipped. Obsolete was different. Obsolete meant replaceable. Obsolete meant your experience could be swapped for someone cheaper, who nodded faster. Maria felt heat rise in her face, not from shame, but from the old anger she kept under lock. Anger at people who treated safety margins as personality flaws. She turned 1 degree toward Crane 6 and forced her attention to the machine geometry she trusted. 90-ton hydraulic with telescopic boom, configured that morning for a moderate radius pick from staging lane C to outbound trailer slot 4. The generator skid was heavy but routine if the system was healthy, outrigger settled, line true, and the load path clear. On paper, this was exactly the kind of lift that built Brent's confidence. Normal weight, familiar yard, repeated movement. Routine operation bred managerial arrogance because routine camouflaged risk until the weak link finally showed itself. Brent crowded her space again. I need that skid in the air in 10 minutes. You'll get my answer after I finish pre-lift. You've been finishing pre-lift for 30 minutes. Because pre-lift is the work. His mouth flattened. No, pre-lift is paperwork. Work is lifting. That sentence drew a visible reaction from 3 different corners of the lane. One signalman looked down at his boots. The rigger nearest the hook block adjusted his radio earpiece twice, even though nothing was wrong with it. Everybody on that ground understood the distinction Brent was trying to erase. If inspection became paperwork, then warning became opinion. And then every refusal could be framed as attitude. Maria set the tablet against the track frame and spoke clearly enough for the nearest workers to hear, not because she wanted a scene, but because scenes were already happening. Procedure is not optional, Brent. You know that. He took one step back and spread his arms in theatrical disbelief. I know we are burning money by the minute. I know headquarters called me at 4:50 asking why we're behind. I know if this shipment misses tide lock, we eat penalties all week. What I do not know is why my highest paid operator is acting like a trainee. A tug operator keyed his radio and then released it without speaking. The static chirp sounded louder than usual. Maria glanced toward the waterline clock on the fuel shed. 5:43 a.m. 3 minutes had already stretched into something that felt like a formal hearing. She had been through pressure before. Weather windows collapsing, night shifts short-handed, cargo arriving out of sequence. The pattern never changed. When schedule pressure rose, procedure was reframed as delay. When procedure was reframed as delay, the operator became the problem instead of the hazard. She returned her gaze to Brent. You can call it whatever you want. My call stands until inspection closes. He smiled without warmth. Your call? That's cute. Let me make this simple. Lift the load now. She held his stare and did not move. No. The word was quiet. It was also the most expensive word on any industrial site when spoken at the right moment. Brent's voice dropped sharper. No? No. Then you're refusing a direct order. I'm fulfilling one, Site Safety Manual, Section 6, Operator Authority to Halt. He exhaled hard through his nose and looked at the foreman beside him, as if appealing to a jury. You hear this? I give a direct operational order and she hides behind a binder. Maria answered before the foreman could speak. Binders are where we keep the names of people we promised not to bury. No one laughed. No one should have. Brent took 2 steps toward the base of the crane and slapped the steel body panel with his palm. This machine was inspected last week. Green sticker, no red tags, no faults reported overnight. You're inventing problems. Then let me finish and prove it. I don't need proof from somebody who already decided to slow roll the shift. You need proof from physics, Maria said. You always do. He stared at her, eyes narrowing. In the pause, Maria watched his jaw work and his shoulders stay squared to the crew, as if he were deciding whether to keep pressing in public. Engines idled around them while nobody moved into the hook lane. At 5:47 a.m., a container handler reversed along the far lane with a long warning beep that echoed off the warehouse wall. Dawn light climbed over the cranes and turned the wet deck pale silver. Men shifted weight from one boot to the other, not speaking. Nobody wanted to be the next person Brent targeted. Nobody wanted to be standing in a bad lane if Maria turned out right. To Maria, his next move was clear: performance over caution. Listen up, he shouted to the crew. We are continuing the lift plan. If anyone has concerns, bring them to me, not to someone who thinks every creak is a catastrophe. We are done with this drama. Maria heard the word drama and felt another hard click inside her chest. That was how procedural refusal got dismantled in real time. Relabel it as emotion, then recast control as courage. She picked up her tablet, entered a time-stamped note in the inspection app, and hit save while he was still talking. If Command wanted theater, she would answer with records. Brent watched her fingers on the screen and snapped, "Don't start a paper trail to cover your laziness." She looked up. "Documentation is the job." "No," he said again, almost triumphant in repetition. "The job is output. The job is safe. Output." He leaned in close enough that she could smell mint and office coffee instead of diesel and salt. "You are not the only operator in this yard. Remember that?" It was both threat and preview. Maria understood the message. Comply now or be replaced before sunrise. She had seen that move on 2 other sites in her career. Strip authority from the veteran. Seat a junior who wanted to keep a paycheck. Call it leadership. Every time the machine remained the same, the load remained the same, and the risk multiplied because silence replaced judgment. She straightened, one hand on the crane track, the other holding the tablet against her chest like a clipboard shield. "Then seat whoever you want after inspection closes. Until then, this crane stays cold." Brent smiled again, wider this time, as if he had found the sound bite he wanted. "There it is, not caution, control." Maria shook her head once. "Call it what you need to call it." Around them, the yard resumed movement in small, uneasy increments. A forklift rolled forward and stopped. A rigger checked a shackle pin that did not need checking. Radio traffic picked up in cautious half-sentences. The port always looked busiest to Maria right before a system failure, because people kept trying to outrun the warning instead of clearing it. Brent turned away first, pointing toward the trailer lane, where the generator skid waited under floodlights, wrapped, banded, and ready. "You've got 5 minutes," he said over his shoulder. "After that, I make this decision for you." Maria did not answer him. She watched him walk toward the operation shack, shoulders square, phone already in his hand. Then she looked back at Crane 6, at steel and cable and hook and chart, and felt the old rule settle in her bones with complete certainty. Authority could assign blame, cut badges, and move people around like inventory. But none of it changed tensile limits, side load, or gravity. The crew called her stubborn when she stood on that line. Management called her difficult. The machine called her correct or incorrect, and the machine never lied. The machine never lied. So Maria stepped into the quiet space, where steel, sensors, and procedure still had jurisdiction, and set her tablet to inspection mode before Brent reached the shack door. She pulled her gloves on, keyed her radio to maintenance channel, and spoke in a flat, workmanlike cadence. "Crane 6 remains in pre-lift verification. Nobody enters hook lane C until I clear it." No one answered for a second, then a rigger came back with a restrained "Copy, lane C held." She started at the hoist line because rope condition decided everything else. On that crane, the main hoist reeved down from the drum, through the boom tip sheaves to the headache ball hook block, and the vulnerable zone she worried about lived where people rarely looked, near the dead wraps on the drum, where fatigue damage could hide under grime, until tension opened it up. She climbed the left access ladder, boots ringing hollow against grated steel, and crouched beside the drum housing with her flashlight angled low so broken wires would cast shadows. The first sign was not dramatic. It was geometric. One section of rope had swelled into a loose, bulging cage where the outer strands had separated from the core. Bird caging. It looked like a knot trying to untwist itself. Under load, that distortion did not heal, it worsened, redistributing force into fewer intact strands. Maria set the flashlight down, ran 2 fingers along the lay direction, and felt the sharp catches through her glove, where individual wires had snapped and curled out like tiny hooks. She counted aloud while tapping each fracture with a paint marker dot. 1, 2, 3 in this strand, 4, 5, 6, 7 random. She opened the tablet camera, included the serial plate in frame, then took wide and close shots with timestamp overlay. Her voice stayed quiet as she dictated into the app. Main hoist wire rope, layer transition near dead wraps, visible bird cage approximately 110 millimeters length, 7 broken outer wires within 1 lay length. Immediate removal criteria met. She took a second pass of photos with a steel ruler set beside the section, then tagged the image set to asset CR6-hoist-main. Below her, a forklift idled, then cut engine. The sudden drop in noise made the gulls over the pier sound harsh and close. Maria moved 3 feet to the rope anchor side and checked for companion defects. Rust staining around the valley between strands, confirmed long-term moisture exposure and internal fretting. She zoomed her camera and caught red-brown powder packed into the crown gaps. Not decisive alone, but consistent with core degradation. She stood, stretched the stiffness out of her lower back, and gave one more look at the drum spooling alignment. The fleet angle had been running slightly off-center, likely from recent rushed reeving, and that misalignment explained why the damaged segment kept cycling across a high-pressure contact point. It was a full causal chain, not a single bad spot. At 5:51 a.m., the mist coming off the water thinned enough for first sun to hit the boom sections, and the steel flashed pale gold for half a second before the cloud closed again. Brent stayed behind the shack glass with a phone pinned to his ear after a terse dispatch call, effectively pausing his 5-minute countdown until he got headquarters on record. She climbed down and crossed to the cab with clipped, economical steps. If the rope finding had stood alone, she would already have enough to red tag. But Brent had challenged the integrity of her judgment in front of the yard, and Maria believed in overdetermination when stakes were this high. Verify every system, log every fault, leave no room for narrative spin. She opened the cab, sat in the operator seat, and powered the control bus without enabling motion. Screens came alive in sequence. Engine diagnostics, hydraulic temperature, and then the load moment indicator panel with the yellow self-check bars rolling left to right. The LMI was the crane's protective math. It fused boom angle, boom length, load radius, and rated capacity. If angle input went wrong, the capacity calculation went wrong. If capacity calculation went wrong, an operator could be lifting blind while the screen pretended all was normal. She opened the fault history menu and scrolled through overnight logs. 3 entries stood out, all within the last 2 shifts. ANG-SNSRINTMT, code 3, A-17, duration 0.6 to 1.2 seconds, auto recover, intermittent angle sensor dropouts. The exact kind managers called ghosts until one happened in motion. Maria keyed the radio. Maintenance, this is Sullivan in Crane 6. I am seeing repeated LMI angle sensor intermittent faults in event history. Code 3A-17. Confirm if work order exists. A mechanic answered from somewhere near the fuel bay, voice edged with caution. Sullivan, maintenance copy. No open work order on 3A-17 in our queue. Copy, no open order. Stand by for live check. She switched to service display, where raw angle values updated in tenths of a degree. With no load on the hook and brake set, she feathered boom up 1 second, then stopped. The live angle moved from 41.8 to 42.1 and stabilized. She boomed down 1 second. 41.7, 41.5, then a sudden jump to 39.9 before snapping back to 41.4. No corresponding movement in the inclinometer backup channel. Sensor dropout confirmed. She ran it again, recording screen video on her tablet held beside the panel. The jump repeated, this time upward. 42.0, 42.2, 44.1. Back to 42.1. A 2-degree phantom shift at that radius could swing rated capacity by multiple tons. The machine might still move, yes, but the safety envelope no longer had integrity. Maria narrated into the evidence app. Live validation test, no load, minimal boom movement, primary angle channel erratic, non-physical spikes exceeding expected delta, LMI reliability compromised. Condition qualifies as critical instrumentation fault. A deckhand, standing outside the cab window, lifted his chin toward the display. How bad? She answered without softening it. Bad enough that the computer can tell me the wrong chart in the middle of a swing. Static load says 22 tons. Dynamic load during motion can peak much higher. If angle feedback lies at the same moment, you lose margin twice. He nodded once, face tight, and backed away from the tracks. She shut power, locked the control neutral, and descended to inspect the hook block assembly. The headache ball sat suspended a meter off the deck, swaying slightly in the harbor wind. She had seen hairline cracks, hide in paint at the cheek plate weld toe before, especially after side-loading events. Brent would call that cosmetic, because the block still hung straight. Physics didn't care about appearances. A crack at the weld toe was a stress concentrator. Each cycle could drive it deeper, until the remaining section could not carry shock. Maria signaled to a rigger. Hold tagline. Keep it still. He took the line and steadied the block, while she knelt with her flashlight and inspection mirror. At the right cheek plate, roughly the 4 o'clock position relative to the sheave pin, she caught a thin, dark line at the weld toe, about 4 centimeters long. She cleaned the area with solvent wipe, waited 10 seconds, and watched the line reappear, now clearer against bare metal. Luis, she called to the mechanic who had moved closer. Bring dye pen kit. He arrived with a small pouch, eyes moving between her and the operation shack. Maria sprayed cleaner, applied red penetrant, gave it dwell time, wiped, then misted developer. The crack bled back, as a sharp crimson trace through white developer film. No argument left. Luis exhaled through his teeth. That's active. It is, Maria said. Measure it. He set calipers red off. 38 millimeters visible. She photographed the indication with calipers in frame, then shot a wider image showing hook block ID number and reeving path. Add this to maintenance archive under CR6-hook-block. Note NDT field check positive at weld toe. Luis hesitated. You want me to open a corrective work order now? Yes, immediate. Attach my photos and your measurement. He glanced toward the shack again. You know what he told us about work orders this morning? Maria looked at the crack, then at him. I don't care what he told you. Work order exists the moment defect exists. System entry is paperwork catching up to reality. Luis gave a small nod, half respect and half worry. Copy. She stood and stepped back to take in all three findings as one operating picture. Compromised rope, compromised instrumentation, compromised hook block structure. Anyone would stop a critical pick. Together they described a machine outside safe service. She opened the site manual on her tablet and scrolled to the exact language for removal from operation. Her finger rested on the clause she already knew by memory. If wire rope discard criteria are met, or safety instrumentation is unreliable, or load-bearing structure shows cracking, crane shall be taken out of service until repaired and recertified. From the operations shack window, Brent's silhouette moved behind the glass, phone to ear, body language sharp and impatient. Maria keyed the radio to yard channel. All stations, this is Sullivan on Crane 6. Pre-lift inspection has identified critical defects on main hoist rope, LMI angle feedback, and hook block weld. Crane 6 is not fit for operation pending maintenance and engineering sign-off. Repeat, not fit for operation. Static answered first. Then a supervisor on dispatch tried to neutralize tone. Crane 6, dispatch copies inspection issue. Stand by for management direction. Maria replied, negative on issue. This is a stop condition. Log that wording exactly. She walked to the pendant controls mounted near the left side panel and looked at the red tag sleeve hanging from the lanyard clip, still blank. Not yet attached, but ready. She filled out the tag with block letters. Out of service, do not operate, date 5/54. Reason, hoist rope discard, plus LMI fault plus hook block crack. Operator, M. Sullivan, cert ID 47-1182. Ink bled slightly on the damp card. A younger signalman edged closer, keeping his voice low. You really got all three? She handed him the tablet for 5 seconds. He scrolled through the rope, close up, the LMI spike video, the developed crack line, then gave it back without comment. His throat moved as he swallowed. That's not cosmetic. No, Maria said. It's cumulative failure waiting for timing. He looked toward the waiting generator skid in Lane C, shrink wrap still tight and undisturbed under floodlights. If someone runs that pick anyway, they turn routine weight into unpredictable force, she said. When rope integrity drops, impact factors rise. When angle data glitches, chart guidance drifts. When cracked steel takes shock, fracture can run. You stack uncertainties, you stop being an operator and start being a witness. The signalman stepped back, face drawn, and keyed his radio to tell his rigger team to stay clear of the planned load path. Maria clipped the completed red tag to the pendant control handle and cinched it tight so it could not be missed even in a hurry. The bright tag snapped once in the wind and settled against painted steel. She photographed it in place, then took a second shot including the crane number and lane marker to anchor location. Next, she opened the maintenance log, entered each defect with corresponding media IDs, and hit submit. The app timestamp rolled, 5:56:12. For chain integrity, she pulled the cab key, placed it in a lockout pouch, and sealed the pouch with a numbered tie while recording the seal number in the log. Procedure done in order. No skipped steps. No improvisation. From the shack, The door swung open hard enough to rattle the frame, and Brent started back across the yard with 2 supervisors behind him. Maria saw them coming, but the technical work was complete now, documented across 3 systems and 2 witnesses. She set her shoulders, tucked the tablet under her arm, and turned slightly so the red tag stayed visible between her and the lane, a bright square of policy hanging against cold steel. Brent closed the distance fast, boots striking wet concrete with clipped office anger that did not match the yard's slower, heavier rhythm. And when he reached the pendant, he did not read the tag so much as glare through it. "Take that off," he said. "Right now." Maria held her ground beside the left track, tablet tucked under her arm, lockout pouch visible in her gloved hand. "No." He gave a short, incredulous laugh and looked over his shoulder to make sure people were watching, because public compliance was what he wanted now. "You don't get to shut down my crane on your mood." Maria raised the tablet, opened the defect set, and angled the screen toward him without stepping closer. "This is not mood." Bird caging and 7 broken wires in one lay length at the dead wrap transition. Discard criteria met. LMI angle channel faulting non-physical spikes. Hook block cheek plate crack confirmed with penetrant. 3 independent stop conditions. Brent didn't look at the photos for more than a second. "I see grease. I see old steel. And I see you trying to cover a delay." Maria's voice stayed flat. When rope strands fail, load shares over fewer wires, that raises local stress. When angle feedback glitches, the LMI computes the wrong radius and wrong capacity margin. During swing, dynamic load can exceed static by a wide factor. You are asking for a critical pick with reduced rope strength, bad chart math, and a cracked load path component. One supervisor, Darnell, shifted his clipboard from one hand to the other and kept his eyes on the ground. The second, Tessa, watched Brent, not the crane. Brent jabbed a finger toward the generator skid waiting under floodlights. "It's 22 tons. This crane is rated far above that. Lift it." Maria answered at the same volume so the nearest riggers and forklift drivers could hear every word. "Capacity plate is not permission. Capacity assumes a healthy machine and accurate sensors. You no longer have either. I will not operate this crane." Brent took one step in and lowered his voice, trying intimidation in a tighter register. "Then remove the tag and hand me the key." Maria held up the lockout pouch. "Key is sealed under lockout control. Seal number is logged. Chain of custody started at 556. If you break it, that is a management override on record." For the first time, he looked at the pouch and his jaw tightened. "You think throwing policy terms at me will protect you?" "Policy is already protecting the crew," she said. "You can't see it because nothing has happened yet." The wind shifted and pushed a sheet of mist through Lane C. Somewhere behind them, a diesel engine revved and settled. A horn sounded twice from the gate, where a flatbed was waiting for clearance. Brent straightened and widened his stance, returning to performance mode. "Everybody listen," he shouted. "We are not stopping this operation over cosmetic defects and operator drama." Maria answered before the echo died. "Not cosmetic. Structural, mechanical, and instrumentation defects with photo and video evidence." Brent snapped back. "Enough." Maria met his stare. "You ordered a lift. I refused for cause. Here is cause. Read it into dispatch if you want this legal." That landed harder than his insults, because it dragged consequence out of rumor and into process. At 5:59 a.m., the overhead yard lights clicked off in sequence as daylight took over, and the sudden change made faces look starker, less protected by shadow. Brent held out his hand. Last time. Remove the tag. No. Operate the crane. No. Are you refusing a direct order from operations management? I am executing operator stop authority under Section 6 and manufacturer bulletin on rope discard and crack indication. I am refusing an unsafe order. The words came out with the practiced precision she used in interviews after near misses. No adjectives, no heat, just mechanism and rule. Brent looked at Darnell. Witness this. She is insubordinate. Darnell hesitated, then gave a weak nod. Maria turned to him. Witness this too. Manager instructed operation on a red-tagged crane with documented critical defects. Tessa finally spoke, voice quiet but audible. Brent, maybe we pause and get engineering to verify. He cut her off with a hard palm-down gesture. No pause. We already lost 40 minutes. Maria did not move. You lost 40 minutes arguing with evidence. He swung back to her. You think this yard revolves around you because you've been here 14 years? No, she said. It revolves around load paths, tolerances, and gravity. Brent smiled with visible contempt. There's the lecture. You know what I hear? I hear someone who forgot who signs her access. Bad orders don't become safe because they come from payroll, Maria said. Then let me simplify this for you, Brent replied. Take off the tag, run the pick, or you're done on this site. The line held for a beat, with radio static scratching at the edges of the silence. Maria felt the familiar internal split that always arrived at this threshold. One part of her counting bills, mortgage, union dues, her father's medication refill due next week. The other part of her seeing the cracked weld line bleeding red through developer and knowing exactly how quickly a routine day could become a casualty report. She chose the only side that allowed sleep later. Then I'm done on this site, she said. Brent blinked once as if he had expected bargaining. You're serious. I am. Over this. Because of this. He stepped close enough that his vest brushed her sleeve. You are not protecting anyone. You are sabotaging shipment and hiding behind technical jargon. Maria lifted the tablet one more time, thumbed to the LMI video, and held it inches from his face as the angle value jumped and snapped back. That is not jargon. That is a lying sensor. This crack is not jargon. Those broken wires are not jargon. You can call me whatever helps your report, but you cannot call this crane fit. Brent smacked her hand down. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to send the tablet edge against her jacket zipper. Several crew members flinched. I'm done debating, he said. So am I, Maria replied. Crane stays down. 3 minutes later, with the yard clock rolling past 6:02 a.m., power pressure became formal, documented, and loud. Brent waved Tessa forward with his radio mic in one hand and said, Record this. Effective immediately, Maria Sullivan is removed from duty for refusal to execute assigned operations. Tessa looked at Maria, then at Brent. You want termination language? I want removal language now. HR can decorate it later. He pointed at Maria's chest badge. Turn in your access. Maria unclipped the badge, held it for half a second, then placed it in Tessa's open clipboard sleeve. Badge surrendered under protest, she said. Note that I filed red tag evidence to maintenance, dispatch, and compliance log. Brent barked a laugh. You don't get to dictate notes anymore. Record accuracy is not a privilege, Maria said. It is discoverable. The word discoverable made Darnell look sharply at Brent, then away. Brent ignored it and keyed his radio on full yard channel. Dispatch, Ops Manager, Crane 6 operator change, routine staffing adjustment, proceeding with scheduled lift. Maria snapped her own radio up before he could release the key. Dispatch, Sullivan, correction for record, operator removed after safety refusal tied to red tag defects, log entries 55612 through 55803. Request read back. Dispatch came back after a strained pause. Both transmissions received. They did not give the read back. Brent smiled thinly. See? Nobody's panicking except you. Maria slipped the lockout pouch into her jacket pocket and backed one step from the pendant so no one could claim she was obstructing movement. I am not panicking. I am preserving evidence. Brent turned and shouted toward the equipment shed, Evan, get over here. Evan Pike emerged at a jog, helmet askew, still pulling on gloves. 26 years old, with just enough cab time to trust his hands, and not enough command scars to trust his refusals. He slowed when he saw Maria standing by a red tag and two supervisors with tight faces. What's going on? Brent answered for everyone. You're taking Crane 6. Senior operator removed. We're behind and you're up. Evan looked at Maria first, not Brent. Why is it tagged out? Maria met his eyes. Main hoist rope has bird caging and broken wires at discard threshold. LMI angle input is intermittent. Hook block cheek plate has a confirmed crack. I logged all of it, Brent cut in. She's exaggerating. We inspected last week. Maria did not raise her voice. Evan, ask for the photos. Ask for the event log. Ask for maintenance work order numbers. Evan swallowed and looked between them, trapped in the hierarchy everyone else had learned to read. Brent, did maintenance clear it? Maintenance doesn't run this yard, Brent said. I do. You have a direct order. Warm it up and lift on my signal. Maria stepped closer to Evan, careful to keep distance from Brent. Listen to me, the crane can still move. That's the trap. Movement is not safety. At this radius, any lateral swing increases line tension fast. If that rope section sees shock, it can unlay strand by strand. If angle data jumps mid-swing, the LMI won't protect you at the real radius. Brent pointed toward the cab. Do your job or get off the site. Evan froze for a moment, then asked quietly, If I refuse? Brent answered immediately, Then you can walk out with her? The yard seemed to contract around that sentence. Tag lines hung still. No one touched the generator skid shackles. A gull cried over the water, sharp and lonely against the metal echo. Maria saw the fear settle in Evan's shoulders. The same fear that had silenced good people in every industry she had worked. Fear of rent due, fear of being labeled difficult, fear that technical truth would not matter against a manager's signature. She kept her voice steady. If you refuse, you keep your record clean and everyone goes home with all their bones intact. If you accept, get everything in writing and keep the swing minimal. Do not pass over live lanes. Brent snapped. She's not your supervisor. I am. He thrust his hand toward Maria's jacket pocket. Lockout pouch. Now. Maria held his stare, then pulled the sealed pouch free and raised it chest high. Transfer under management override, she said clearly, turning enough for Darnell and Tessa to hear. Seal number L77439, intact at handoff, 0606. Tessa's pen moved on the clipboard as Maria placed the pouch in Brent's palm. Brent yanked the zipper, removed the key ring in full view of the crew, and dropped the emptied pouch onto the pendant housing. He stepped between them and shoved a key ring toward Evan. Take the cab key, Maria spoke before Evan could reach for it. That key was lockout sealed. If seal is broken, log who broke it and at what time. Tessa, still holding the clipboard, looked stricken. Brent, at least call maintenance for sign-off before ikakal. No, he said. I'm done losing time. He turned to Darnell. Cut the tag. Darnell hesitated, then produced a utility knife with a hand that was not steady. Maria watched him look at her once, apology flickering and gone, before he sliced through the zip tie and peeled the red tag from the pendant. The card fluttered to the wet concrete near her boot. She bent, picked it up, and slid it into her tablet case without a word. Physical evidence retained. Brent broke the lockout seal himself, held the snapped plastic tie up like a trophy, then tossed it onto the track. There, he said, crisis over. Maria keyed her phone with her thumb, captured a close photo of the broken seal and the timestamp on the yard clock in the same frame, then sent it to compliance with a one-line note. Management override executed after documented stop order. Witnesses present. Her phone showed sent at 6:07 a.m. Evan took the key ring with an expression that mixed dread and obedience, then started toward the cab ladder. Maria stepped aside and opened a clear path, because interference would let Brent rewrite the event as misconduct instead of refusal. Brent looked back at her one final time, voice low and cold. You wanted to make a point. Point made. Security will escort you out. Maria zipped her jacket, lifted her tablet, and answered in the same calm she had carried since dawn. No, Brent. Physics will make the point. I just wrote it down. The sentence was still in Brent's face when security came out of the shack. Not running, just moving with the stiff posture of people told to make a scene look routine. The older guard, Jalen, lifted one hand toward Maria in a gesture that carried apology and procedure at once. Maria, I need you at the gate. She nodded once. I'm walking. Brent was already turning away, one arm slicing through the air toward Lane C. Rigging team on stations. Evan, in the seat now. We take this clean and we take it fast. Maria stepped backward from the tracks and gave the crane one last direct look while Jalen fell in beside her. Evan was halfway up the cab ladder, boots missing a rung, and then finding it, shoulders tight enough to read from 30 feet away. Darnell was uncoiling taglines with jerky hands. Tessa stood with the clipboard pressed to her vest, not writing anymore. At 6:09 a.m., the harbor wind shifted inland, carrying cold salt over diesel heat and making the stripped red tag in Maria's tablet case feel like a hot object against her side. Jalen kept his voice low as they crossed toward the gate lane. I heard enough to know you didn't walk for nothing. Then remember what you heard, Maria said. I will. Behind them, Brent's voice cracked over the yard radio, amplified by speaker feedback from 3 different machines. Dispatch Crane 6 returning to service, operator change complete. Begin lift sequence on generator skid, lane C to trailer slot 4. Maria stopped dead, turned, and pulled out her phone. She opened the compliance thread, attached the photo of the broken lockout seal, then started a second message addressed to the external safety line she had saved years ago and hoped she would never need from a sidewalk. Her thumbs moved fast and precise. Red tag removed under management override. Lockout seal broken by operations manager at 6:07. Critical defects previously logged with image IDs. Unsafe lift, now commencing. She hit send and received an auto response with a case number. She screenshot that too. At the crane, Evan's voice came over open radio, thinner than usual. Crane 6 and cab. Pre-start checklist. Brent cut him off. Skip to operational. We're already late. Luis the mechanic broke in from maintenance channel, cautious but audible on the mixed traffic. Ops, confirm we're carrying open rope and structural defect reports on that asset. Brent answered without pause. Negative actionable defects. Proceed. Maria stared at the phone screen, so she would not shout across the yard fence. She typed a final line into the complaint thread. Maintenance inquiry denied on open channel at 6:10. The app stamped it. Jalen touched her elbow lightly. Gate, Maria? She resumed walking but kept her eyes on lane C, through the chain link gaps. The generator skid sat on timber cribbing under 2 slings and a spreader beam, wrapped corners dark with moisture. Weight stenciled on one side, 44,000 pounds. 22 tons static, and only static if no sudden swing, no snatch load, no bad angle math, no compromised line. She'd explained all of it twice in 10 minutes. None of it had disappeared. Evan's engine start carried across the pier as a deep mechanical thrum, followed by hydraulic pump whine. The boom stayed at working angle, hook block, lowering in measured increments toward the rigging eye. Riggers moved in, clipped shackles, checked pins, and cleared hands. Even in a bad operation, craft habits persisted. That was the cruel part. Competent people could still be folded into an incompetent decision. From near the shack, Brent shouted, "Faster, gentlemen, this is not museum work." Tessa keyed her radio, voice controlled. All ground, maintain exclusion around lane C and staging lane east. Maria caught that and exhaled through her nose. At least someone was still trying to reduce blast radius. The gate clicked open. Jalen gestured her through, then paused. "You need a witness statement. I'm available after shift." "I'll call," she said. Outside the fence, she stopped on the public sidewalk, where she still had line of sight between stacked containers. She could have kept walking. She could have gone to her truck and waited for the phone to ring. Instead, she stood with both hands on the fence wire, cold metal biting through her gloves, and watched the operation she had refused become real under someone else's hands. The radio chatter sharpened as the lift team settled into cadence. Hooks entered. Taglines ready. Pins checked. Load path clear to trailer 4. Evan answered each call correctly, voice steadier now that task had replaced argument. Maria knew that rhythm from her own body. Checklist language could calm fear while danger accumulated underneath. Brent keyed in again. Crane 6, take strain. The hoist line tightened, straightening the slings until they sang at low pitch. The generator skid creaked against cribbing, then settled back as Evan tested tension. Nothing visibly wrong yet. Machines rarely announced the exact second they crossed from stressed to failing. Maria opened a voice memo on her phone and began narrating, in the clipped style she used for incident records. Observation point outside Pier 14 South Gate, time 6:12. Red-tagged Crane 6 operating under management override. Wind from southwest estimated 12 to 14 knots. Generator skid weight marked 44,000 pounds. On the yard side, a forklift operator in the staging lane backed farther away than he had to and set his brake. He looked toward Brent and got a sharp hand signal to hold position. The forklift stayed there, 2 lanes from where it should have been if the exclusion perimeter had been enforced the way policy required. Maria keyed the voice memo again. Forklift remains in adjacent lane during active pick, exclusion not fully cleared. Evan called, "Load is light on cribbing." Brent, then lift it. A beat of silence. Evan, confirm swing route keeps west of marker cones? Brent, route is what I say it is. Up and over, then swing. Tessa tried once more, words deliberate. Brent, west route avoids the parked forklift. He snapped back. We are not re-rigging for a parked forklift. Move. The dread Maria felt was not panic. It was mathematical. She could map each choice to load behavior in her head like plotting points on graph paper. Compromised rope had less tolerance for transient spikes. Faulty angle input meant the LMI could present a safer capacity picture than reality at precisely the wrong moment. A cracked cheek plate could carry steady pull, then propagate under shock. None of that guaranteed failure on every lift. It only meant the boundary between routine and catastrophe had narrowed to a strip too thin for honest operators to trust. By 6:13 a.m., the sky had gone from steel gray to washed blue, and the floodlights that had made the skid look theatrical were dead, leaving only hard daylight on hard mistakes. Evan's next call came tight. Taking it up. The hook rose. Slings loaded evenly. The skid broke free from the cribbing by inches, then a foot, then two, hanging level enough to reassure anyone who did not understand how many failures began with a clean initial hoist. Maria whispered without meaning to. Set it down. No one heard her outside the fence. Brent did. Good, hold that. Now swing east. The skid began to rotate with the boom, slow at first, tag lines trailing. One rigger braced his boots and tried to control yaw, but the crosswind got under one wrapped corner and nudged the tail wider than planned. Evan corrected, maybe too abruptly, and the load answered with a larger pendulum arc. Maria's fingers tightened on the fence until the links pressed into her palms. On radio, a spotter shouted, Low drifting, drifting east. Brent, counter it, keep moving. Evan, I'm getting lag on angle readout. Maria felt her stomach drop, as if she had stepped into an empty shaft. There it was in plain words. Tessa cut in, louder. Ops, pause swing, pause now. Brent ignored her. Do not stop mid-arc, carry through. The crane groaned, a deep steel complaint that carried farther than shouting. The boom flex was subtle but visible to trained eyes. A slight dip, recovery, then another as side load built. Maria watched the hoist line near the drum where the damaged section would cycle under peak tension during motion. She could not see individual strands from this distance, but she knew when that segment would come under the sheave by timing alone. She brought the phone to her mouth. External case file update. Live operation showing unplanned lateral swing and reported angle readout lag. Management instructing continuation. Then the sequence compressed. T+0, she said into the recorder as the skid cleared 6 feet and entered full swing. 8 seconds later, the lateral arc pushed beyond the cone line, tail of the skid kicking farther east than the lift plan chalk marks. Tagline handler stumbled 2 steps to keep up. One let go to avoid being pulled off his feet. At 19 seconds, the boom emitted a sharp, resonant groan. Not just engine load, a structural sound that made several heads snap up at once. Evan's voice cracked over radio. I'm high on side load. I need to set down. Brent answered, Negative. Keep it moving. At 27 seconds, the hoist line spoke in the exact sound Maria had warned about. Not one clean snap, but a rapid tearing chatter, zipper fast, as compromised outer strands let go in sequence. Even from the sidewalk, she heard it over engine noise, a dry metallic rip that turned knees weak, because it meant remaining wires were taking impossible share. "Line failure," someone screamed. At 31 seconds, gravity took over. The generator skid dropped straight through a short free fall, hit the staging lane with a ground-shaking slam, and bounced one corner into the parked forklift's mast. Steel folded. Glass burst outward in a glitter cloud. A hydraulic line on the forklift ruptured and atomized fluid into a mist that caught sunlight like dirty rain. Concrete dust erupted waist-high and rolled through Lane C in a gray wall. Air horns went off from 3 directions. Radios exploded into overlapping calls. "Man down, Lane C. Kill fuel. Emergency stop, emergency stop. Fire watch to staging east." Maria ducked instinctively as debris clattered against the fence, then looked up immediately, scanning for motion. The forklift operator was crawling out the far side, helmet gone but moving. 2 riggers were on the ground near the tagline path. One was clutching his lower leg and yelling. The other disoriented, trying to stand and sitting back down hard. No flames yet. That mattered. Inside the yard, Luis sprinted to the fuel isolation post and yanked the emergency shutoff. Engines coughed down in sequence. Tessa took command voice on radio when Brent went silent. "All units hold position. No ignition sources." "Medics to Lane C, repeat. No ignition sources." A fire watch crew arrived with extinguishers and a foam cart, fanning out around the diesel mist zone and torn hydraulic hoses. One knelt to cap a leaking line. Another pushed dry absorbent booms around the spill perimeter to keep runoff out of storm drains. Training took over where management had failed. Maria climbed the fence gate latch and shouted to Jalen, "Open up, I'm first aid certified." He looked toward the yard supervisor, got a frantic nod, and opened the gate. She ran in, boots sliding once in dust, and dropped beside the nearest injured rigger. "Stay with me, don't move your leg." His face was gray with shock, breathing too fast. She held his shoulder and kept her voice low and firm. "Look at me. Medics are coming. Keep your head still." He nodded, jaw shaking. 10 yards away, Brent stood near the shack, radio hanging at his side, staring at the collapsed skid and mangled forklift as if waiting for someone to announce this was a drill reset. Dust had turned his clean vest the same color as everyone else's. For the first time that morning, he looked like part of the yard instead of above it. Sirens rose from the access road. The first medic unit rolled through the gate at 6:17 a.m., followed by port fire response. Maria stayed kneeling, one hand steady on the rigger's shoulder, while triage teams moved in and tagged priorities. She heard Tessa giving incident facts to dispatch in clipped sentences. Dropped load, heavy equipment impact, multiple injuries, fuel isolated, no active fire. When the stretcher team took over, Maria stood and stepped back, breathing through concrete dust and diesel vapor, eyes burning but clear. The crane sat frozen over Lane C, with a shortened line and a broken sequence of strands, hanging near the drum like frayed wire brush. The red tag she had recovered earlier was still in her tablet case, dry and intact, while the yard around it had been rewritten in steel, glass, and arithmetic. Port fire officers pushed everyone not assigned to rescue back behind a taped perimeter, and Maria moved when they told her, hands shaking only after she stepped away from the injured men. The dropped generator skid sat canted on one corner, sling hardware twisted under it, forklift mast flattened into a bent steel frame that no mechanic would rebuild. A lieutenant with a soot-marked helmet pointed to the drifting diesel mist and gave clipped orders. Ignition control stays active. Foam line charged. Nobody touches that wreck until safety and investigators clear it. Around him, radios hissed with overlapping call signs and breathing. Brent found his voice again only when command structure replaced his authority. We need to clear lane C and get alternate equipment in. We can still make second tide. The incident commander did not even look at him. This terminal is an emergency shutdown. You don't restart anything until I release it in writing. Brent opened his mouth, then closed it when two port police officers stepped in and asked for his ID, title, and last instruction issued before the drop. Maria watched the exchange from behind the tape and felt no triumph, only a cold, leveling certainty. Procedure had been mocked at dawn. By 6:26, procedure was the only language anyone spoke. A medic checked Maria's pupils, pulse, and hands for cuts from debris. You were inside the impact zone after the drop? She nodded toward the rigger she had stabilized. Only for first aid, then I cleared. He marked his form and said, You'll still need exposure screening because of hydraulic aerosol. Don't leave site without signing triage release. She gave him her name and employee number, then corrected herself. Former employee number according to management at 6:02. The medic glanced up from his clipboard. After this morning, that detail is going to be part of someone else's paperwork problem. At 6:31 a.m., a safety officer began witness capture in sequence by proximity. Maria was fourth. She sat on an overturned cable reel near the gate with her tablet on her knees while Officer Ren Patel opened a digital statement form. Start with your role. Maria gave it in the same calm cadence she had used all morning. Senior Crane Operator NCCCO certified, 14 years heavy lift. Primary operator assigned to crane 6 on first shift generator transfer. Patel asked for timeline markers. She answered without searching. Critical defects identified between 5:51 and 5:56. Red tag applied at 5:56. Key lockout seal applied and logged. Management override executed at 6:07. Load dropped at approximately 6:13 and 31 seconds from initiation of full swing. Patel paused, looked up. You timed it? Maria held up her phone. I was recording observational notes outside the gate. She transferred files one by one. Rope photos with ruler, LMI spike video, dye-penetrant crack images, red tag image on pendant, broken seal image with yard clock and frame, and the audio memo with time-stamped verbal markers. Patel verified hashes in front of her and assigned chain of custody IDs. These are now preserved as primary evidence. Maria unzipped her tablet case and produced the physical red tag and the snapped lockout tie she had picked up off the track after Brent tossed it. Patel called over a second officer to witness packaging, then sealed both items in labeled bags. Physical evidence received from Operator Sullivan at 6:44. He read aloud. Condition intact. Thread closed, clean, and documented. Near the staging lane, Luis gave his statement to another investigator, then looked over once at Maria and tapped 2 fingers against his own clipboard. I logged it. Tessa, still dusty, handed over her notes with pages bent from her grip. Darnell stood 10 feet away with shoulders rounded, eyes fixed on the concrete where he had cut the tag. When his turn came, Patel asked, Who physically removed the red tag? Darnell swallowed. I did, on instruction from Operations Manager Halverson. Did you object? I hesitated. I did not refuse. He did not look at Maria when he said it. She did not look away. By 7:05 a.m., casualty status stabilized enough for operations accounting to begin. One rigger had a severe lower leg fracture requiring surgery. 2 workers were treated for concussion symptoms from secondary debris strike. The forklift operator had shoulder trauma and lacerations from broken glass, but remained alert and oriented. No fire, no fatalities, no secondary collapse. That line mattered because it represented a narrow escape, not a minor event. A port physician told command, "If that atomized diesel had found a hot surface or arc source, this lane could have become a burn incident across multiple crews." The phrase moved through radios in quieter voices. No ignition this time. At 7:22, dispatch froze all heavy lift activity across Pier 14 and 2 adjacent lanes pending fleet inspection. Screens in the operations shack switched from load schedules to red outage blocks. The superintendent called from home, arrived with rain still on his coat, and asked for first numbers. Maintenance gave him equipment status in a grim list. Crane 6 out of service pending forensic teardown. Forklift unit FL19 totaled. Generator skid frame compromised. Unknown internal damage until manufacturer rep opened casing. 2 rigging sets scrapped due to shock event exposure. Containment and cleanup contractor mobilized. He rubbed his forehead and said, not to anyone in particular, "One override bought us a full stop." Brent tried to reframe the event as unforeseeable rigging instability inside the first management huddle. Maria heard enough through the open shack door to catch the sentence. The load caught wind and kicked. Could happen on any yard. Tessa answered before anyone else. Wind did not create the defect photos. Wind did not cut the lockout seal. Wind did not issue continuation orders after reported angle lag. Silence followed. Then the superintendent asked for all radio logs preserved and copied to legal. Brent's reply came smaller than his morning voice. "Do what you need." At 8:10 a.m., Maria's external safety complaint called back. The investigator on the line identified herself, confirmed case number, and asked whether retaliation had occurred before the incident. Maria answered with date, time, exact wording, and witness names. "I was removed from duty for refusing an unsafe lift and surrendering badge under protest at 6:02. Incident occurred after management override." The investigator said, "Your documentation has been received. Preserve all originals. Do not alter metadata. We are issuing a same-day inquiry notice." External contact outcome logged, not vanished. Cleanup crews worked in deliberate phases. Absorbent on hydraulic spill, diesel containment booms, debris mapping grid, lift path measurements, and drone photography for scene reconstruction. Maria stayed until she was released, then was asked to remain available within 30 minutes of the port for follow-up interviews. At 9:40, she sat in a temporary conference room with legal counsel, union representation, and a labor relations specialist who had clearly not expected to meet her under these conditions. He opened with policy language. "Your employment status this morning may have been actioned prematurely." Maria answered, "My status was actioned as retaliation. You can choose the term that fits your risk appetite." The first formal loss estimate circulated by noon in a restricted incident brief. Maria saw it when Union Counsel slid the page across the table and tapped the totals with a capped pen. Direct property and equipment damage, $9.6 million preliminary. Contractual delay exposure if outbound window missed, estimated $4.1 million. environmental mitigation, and hazardous cleanup reserve, pending 6-figure minimum, operational shutdown baseline, 72 hours, likely extending after regulatory hold. She read each line twice. Brent had demanded 10 minutes. The sheet measured the price of those minutes in 7 digits. 3 days passed before the shutdown baseline was revised to a full 23-day terminal closure for heavy lift operations, because investigators expanded scope from a single dropped load to safety culture failure and lockout bypass risk across the pier. By then, Maria had given 2 sworn statements and 1 recorded technical walkthrough, using a crane simulator to demonstrate why intermittent boom angle feedback could corrupt safe operating assumptions during lateral movement. She kept explanations plain and mechanical. Static weight is what sits still. Dynamic load is what moves. When swing starts, force multiplies. If sensor truth drops out in that window, your chart confidence is fiction. On day 5, OSHA arrived with willful violation language already drafted from preliminary evidence, including retaliatory removal after protected stop work activity and operation under defeated lockout controls. Management Council argued classification should be serious, not willful. The lead compliance officer answered, "Willful means the hazard was known and disregarded. Your own timestamp trail establishes knowledge." Maria was present as a technical witness, not a plaintiff, yet every sentence tracked what she had recorded between 5:51 and 6:13. Data had outlived argument exactly as she intended. Insurance consequences landed in phases. The carrier issued a reservation of rights letter first, then partial denial on the largest equipment and business interruption components, once override documentation, and preserved radio audio, confirmed managerial instruction to proceed after red tag lockout. The adjuster put it in restrained corporate phrasing during a call Maria attended with counsel. Coverage may be limited where deliberate procedural bypass materially increased loss severity. Union counsel muted the line and said to her, "Translation? They're not paying the big part." Shortcuts were now being priced by actuaries instead of operators. By the second week after the drop, Pier 14's clients had begun diverting high-risk cargo to competing terminals, not because of one mechanical failure, but because audit confidence had collapsed. The Port Authority issued a corrective action directive requiring independent sign-off for all critical lifts, protected refusal protocol retraining, and immutable digital lockout logs with executive visibility. Maria read the directive in a trailer office that smelled like wet paper and coffee and noted the irony without speaking it aloud. The reforms mirrored practices she had tried to enforce before sunrise, on the day she was called obsolete. On day 23, heavy lift operations resumed under restricted capacity and external oversight. The same afternoon, Labor Relations delivered a written notice rescinding Maria's termination, restoring full back pay, and converting her removal record to protected safety refusal. The letter was careful, legal, and dry. The arithmetic behind it was not. One manager's insistence on speed had cost the company a quarter's profit, triggered willful citations, fractured insurance recovery, and placed his own name in civil filings alongside reckless endangerment language. Maria folded the letter once, slid it into her bag beside a copy of the original red tag photo, and went back to the yard, where machines still waited for someone to tell the truth about them. Maria folded the reinstatement letter into her bag and was halfway back across Pier 14 when Tessa stepped out of the temporary compliance trailer and called her name. "Don't leave yet. Closing conference moved up. They want you in room B." The trailer door banged in the wind behind her, and she held a thick binder against her vest with both hands, knuckles pale. Maria read the expression first. Not panic, not uncertainty, but the look of someone who had decided to stop carrying management's version of events. "Who's in there?" Maria asked. Tessa answered. "Port Authority, OSHA, Corporate Legal, Union, and Halverson." She swallowed once. "He brought counsel." Maria nodded and followed her through the gravel cut between stacked barriers, boots crunching over dried absorbent left from the spill response. Inside room B, the fluorescent lights buzzed above a long table scarred by years of coffee rings and pen marks. Brent sat at the far end in a pressed shirt without his field vest, jaw set, lawyer at his right shoulder. He did not look at Maria when she entered. The superintendent did, then pointed to an open chair. "Sullivan, sit. We're going on record." Officer Ren Patel stood by a monitor card and connected a drive labeled Evidence Master. The screen lit with timestamp folders Maria recognized. Rope photos, LMI video, crack test images, red tag placement, broken seal, fence line audio memo, radio archive export. Patel spoke without drama. "Chain of custody verified for all items introduced today. Exhibits 12 and 13 remain physical. Removed red tag and lockout seal tie." He placed both sealed evidence bags on the table where everyone could see them. The red tag card was damp warped at one corner but still legible in block letters. Brent's lawyer leaned in, scanning the handwriting, then sat back and whispered something that made Brent's mouth flatten. The OSHA compliance officer opened first. "We'll address 3 determinations: known hazard operation, lockout defeat, and retaliatory removal after protected refusal. Mr. Halverson, did you issue an order to proceed after red tag notification?" Brent shifted his chair. "I issued an operational judgment based on schedule exposure and prior inspection status." The officer did not break eye contact. "That is not an answer," Brent's lawyer intervened. "My client disputes the characterization of known hazard." Patel clicked to a still frame of the dye-penetrant crack with calipers and timestamp, then to the rope bird caging close-up with broken wire count dots, then to the LMI spike video where the angle value jumped and snapped back while the backup channel stayed stable, then to the radio transcript with Brent's words highlighted: "Negative actionable defects. Proceed." The room stayed quiet long enough for the monitor fan noise to become audible. The officer spoke again, slower. Hazard knowledge was explicit. Operator communicated mechanism, defect type, and stop authority. Maintenance inquiry was denied on channel. Lockout was then defeated by management. "We are classifying willful." Brent finally looked at Maria. "You recorded from outside the fence to build a case." Maria kept her hands flat on the table. "I recorded because you broke a lockout seal and continued a critical lift over active lanes." The superintendent exhaled through his nose and turned to dispatch manager Alina Cho, who sat with a laptop open and 2 printed log sheets. "Explain the 602 entry." Alina tapped the first sheet. Original dispatch text read, "Operator change routine staffing adjustment, entered by console clerk under verbal instruction. At 6:18, after incident command takeover, entry was amended to operator removed following safety refusal tied to red tag defects. Amendment log preserved." She slid the second sheet forward. No data deletion. Full audit trail retained. Brent's lawyer asked, "Who ordered that initial wording?" Alina answered without looking up. Operations Manager Halverson. That closed another loop that had hung since dawn. Tessa opened her binder and placed 3 pages on the table. My handwritten contemporaneous notes from 5:58 to 6:10. I wrote, Brent says cut the tag. Brent says skip maintenance sign-off. And Maria states seal number L-77439 intact at handoff. Her voice shook once, then steadied. I didn't read these in my first verbal summary. I'm reading them now. Brent turned sharply toward her. You're revising to protect yourself. Tessa met his stare for a full beat. I'm correcting to match. What happened? Louise spoke next, when asked about work orders. I was told that morning not to open 1 on 3 A-17. I delayed because of that instruction. That was wrong. I entered the record as soon as Sullivan called it in. He set a printed screenshot on the table showing the delayed work order creation time and the supervisor message thread telling maintenance to hold non-critical entries until post-shift. Officer Patel marked it and bagged it as supplemental exhibit. Darnell had sat silent near the door, cap in both hands, until Union Counsel asked if he wished to add to his earlier statement. He stood, voice rough. I cut the tag because he ordered it, and I didn't want to get walked out. I saw the crack photo on her tablet before I cut it. I knew enough to refuse, and I didn't. He looked at Maria then, finally finishing the apology he had abandoned in the yard. You were right, and I failed the crew. Maria answered quietly. You're saying it on record now. That matters. Evan's statement was read into minutes because he was still on restricted duty after a stress response evaluation. In it, he confirmed that he had reported angle readout lag during swing and requested to set the load down. Brent had denied the pause. The superintendent closed his notebook and looked at Brent. That is a direct contradiction to your first report. Brent's reply came brittle. I was managing an active operation under time pressure. The superintendent said, Time pressure is not a defense to bypassing lockout and retaliation. He pushed a folder across the table. Effective immediately, you are terminated for cause, access revoked, preserve your phone and laptop for litigation hold. Port Police, already waiting outside, stepped in when Brent stood too fast and knocked his chair back. He did not shout. He just stared at the evidence bags as if the cardboard tag had personally betrayed him, then walked out between the officers with his counsel gathering loose papers behind him. Through the trailer window, Maria saw him stop once in the lot when a process server approached and handed him 2 envelopes. Civil filings from the injured workers, delivered before his car door closed. No one in room B moved to watch longer. The superintendent turned back to the table and signed the termination form with 2 witnesses. Next item, he said. Corrective controls and reinstatement execution. HR manager Denise Kramer entered with a small lockbox and removed Maria's access badge, reprinted that morning with restored credentials and senior operator status. She set it in front of Maria beside a back pay worksheet and a memo assigning her as paid lead instructor for mandatory stop work authority training across all heavy lift teams. This is not symbolic, Denise said. Training attendance is tied to return to work clearance for supervisors, including me. Maria clipped the badge to her vest and read the memo line by line before signing acceptance. I'll teach it, she said, but we include dispatch language standards, lockout chain, and retaliation reporting in the same block. Denise nodded. Approved. At 3:10 that afternoon, Maria stood in Bay 2 with 23 workers and 6 managers in folding chairs facing a projector screen. The recovered red tag and snapped seal were not returned yet. They remained in evidence custody, so Patel had provided high-resolution exhibit images for training use with chain labels visible. Maria clicked to the first slide, a photo of the rope birdcage with broken wires marked. Discard criteria is not opinion, she said. Next slide, LMI spike. Video paused at the false angle jump. Intermittent sensors are failures, not quirks. Next slide, crack indication with developer bleed. Cosmetic is paint. This was structure. She moved to a transcript slide and read Brent's line aloud. We are not losing this shipment window over one paranoid operator. Then she read the final cost sheet beneath it. $9.6 million direct loss, $4.1 million, delay penalties, 23-day closure, willful citations, partial insurance denial, and client contract termination after port audit. Saved 0 hours, she said, looking directly at the supervisors in the front row. Lost a quarter's profit. No one argued. After the session, Jalen waited by the gate and handed her a copy of his witness statement with official receipt stamp. For your file, he said, I testified to the escort timing and your complaint call. She thanked him and tucked it into the same folder as the reinstatement letter. Her phone rang before she reached her truck. External safety investigator. Same voice from the callback. Case closure notice, she said. Retaliation substantiated. Corrective order issued. Your evidence package is now part of enforcement record. Maria asked one question. Any unresolved items tied to my submissions? The investigator answered, none. Every item is either adjudicated or transferred to active court docket. You're clear. Maria ended the call, stood for a moment in the late light, and looked back at Pier 14 where Crane 6 sat under restricted use tape awaiting recertification. Steel, cable, sensors, logs, people, consequences. Every thread tied off in writing. Authority had issued commands that morning. Physics had issued the final ruling, and this time the ruling stayed on the record.